way. United we win.
Deep right field. Another absolute bomb over the flag court.
We are family.
Outstanding effort again.
We're busting ours to kick yours.
That's big time.
-15.
Respect all, fear none.
Oh, did he belt that one?
Intensity is not a perfume.
It was a no-doubter.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We are up in the bird's nest here at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I'm Brendan Mortensen alongside Annie Klaff. Annie, we haven't been able to go a single week without 37 pieces of news happening. We have a lot to get to today between Jordan Westburg's injury, Coby Mayo's promotion, Jackson Holliday's recent success. But first, as is tradition, as was started by Paul Mancano here on this show, we would normally start with a softball update. As Birdland Softball has just started, Team Lime picked up our first win. It's Team Green, but really it's Team Lime. The vibes are great. Picked up our first win on Monday. Annie, I would ask you about the red team, but you have no idea how the vibes are.
I have not been able to make it to a game yet.
Not been able to make it.
It's true. I mean, I still live in Northern Virginia. I'm making
People are starting to question your commitment to Team Red, and quite frankly, I think it's messing with the mojo. I think Team Red, from the sounds of things, got stomped by Team Yellow on Monday.
Is that so?
That is so. I know so because Lime Team got stomped by Team Yellow about a week ago. Team Yellow is a powerhouse.
Well, in the words of Brendan Mortensen, his team was not very good. So
Team Lime did not have our best showing week one, but we got it together after a game on Monday. We had a close loss in game one, and then game two we came back and got a big win. So that's huge for Team Lime. But look, Team Red, I mean, again, I'm questioning the commitment
it's because
here.
I'm not there that they're not doing very well.
That's what people are starting to say. The vibes are off because Annie just has no idea what the vibes are.
Well, one day I'll make it.
Allegedly. We'll see about that.
The commitment will come through.
Sure.
I promise you, Team Red.
Well, we do have a lot of...
I'm not sure you want me either way because my softball experience is minimal.
Well, there's only one way to find out, which is, showing up to a game.
Hey, if it was kickball, then I'm your person. But
if it was kickball, sure. I mean,
that's not the case.
Then we're just, it could be any sport at that point. Then we're just talking nonsense. The whole system just devolves if we're talking about going into different sports.
All right.
Well, we have Orioles baseball to talk about. There are a lot of things to get to here. Unfortunately, we do need to start with injury news. We'll touch briefly on Grayson Rodriguez's scratch from last night. There's not much to say about it at this point because we just don't know what the extent of the injury is. So we're not going to speculate. The only things we can say are that he was scratched from his start last night and that it is the same type of injury that he had a few years ago in AAA Norfolk. That kept him out for an extended period of time. However, there are degrees and grades of this injury type, and we do not know what that extent is. So this could be a brief absence. This could be an extended absence. We're not sure, and there's no use in speculating about it right now. Grayson Rodriguez is reportedly heading back to Baltimore to get further tests and evaluations and things like that. Obviously, if this is a long-term thing, then it's time to panic. But there is no need to panic right now because we don't know what the extent of the injury is.
Also, especially, the other thing to note is that Albert Suarez came in, was told was giving the start, I think, 10 minutes before.
Yeah.
And then had a phenomenal outing. He pitched for 5 scoreless innings, matched his season high of 6 strikeouts. So for that kind of performance on such short notice, really huge creds to Suarez yesterday.
Yeah, he's been doing this all season. I know Albert Suarez had been a little bit shaky before his move back to the bullpen, but it is admirable what he has given you this year. With the amount of injuries that this Orioles pitching rotation has had, you've got 3 guys out for the season. Grayson Rodriguez has missed some time here and there. Hopefully he doesn't miss more time here. Dean Kramer was out for a while. Albert Suarez has just pretty seamlessly bounced back and forth between his role in the bullpen and his role in the starting rotation. And I don't know where this Orioles pitching staff is without him.
Yeah, completely. And I think that, again, just having that on such short notice, yes, it will be a blow to the rotation, but we don't have any specifics yet. Like you said, Grayson will be getting tested and for imaging today, so nothing to dwell on that side of things. But having seen Suarez last night and his performance last night, that's a really kind of a sign for hope that just in case anything happens.
Yeah, obviously, Albert Suarez, you're not expecting him to come in and replace Grayson Rodriguez if that is
number 2.
what is required, because there really is no replacing Grayson Rodriguez, especially post-trade deadline. But hopefully that's just not necessary. So cross some fingers. If you were a kid and had like I want a snow day ritual, do that. Yeah. Whatever is bringing you good luck for this Grayson Rodriguez potential injury, do that, because we would love to see Grayson Rodriguez still post every 5th day. Another important piece that we unfortunately will not see for a while is Jordan Westburg. You took 3 out of 4 against Toronto. You had the Jackson Holliday Grand Slam. The vibes were great. And then Jordan Westburg gets hit in the hand with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, fractures his hand, and the Orioles are hopeful, and Jordan Westburg expressed the same sentiment as well yesterday, that he is hopeful that he will be back by the end of the regular season. There's nobody that's going to work harder to get back from an injury than Jordan Westburg, outside of maybe James McCann, who's just going to stay in the game. He'd probably play with 2 broken hands, given the evidence that we have now. Jordan Westburg is a grinder. He is an incredibly hard worker. A lot of players have said that he might be the hardest worker on the team. So if there's somebody that I would bet on to come back earlier than expected, it's Jordan Westburg. But also, with broken bone, like, you can't just work so hard that the bones heal faster, right? So we'll see what ends up happening with Jordan Westburg, but this is a huge blow for the Orioles lineup. One of the best right-handed bats in this lineup. He was an all-star, hitting .270 with an .815 OPS, 25 doubles, 18 home runs. He was also incredibly clutch. He had a .426 batting average with an OPS over 1,200 in late and close situations, which is the 7th inning or later, where the game is either tied, you are up 1, or you have at least the tying run on deck. So Jordan Westburg, there's no replacing Jordan Westburg. We're going to talk about Coby Mayo here in a few minutes, but there is no replacing an all-star third baseman.
Yeah, and it was a really weird series against the Blue Jays last at home, because that was when McCann was hit in the nose,
right,
and there were fractures there, and then obviously Westburg was hit in the hand and a fracture there. So it was a really weird, bittersweet series. They won 3 of 4. Jackson Holliday, like you said, at his grand slam. So that was weird, but you're right. Westburg, losing him in the lineup is a big loss, both on the field and off the field. Huge leader in the clubhouse, huge personality, and especially to that infield, which has now got a lot younger, which we'll talk about. But in terms of consistency, he has been one of the most consistent in this lineup. He even improved from last season, a jump in his OPS from 715 to 814. He has the 3rd most home runs on this team this season with 18, 4th most RBIs with 58, 5th most stolen bases, 3rd best batting average, and 3rd best slugging percentage, and on base plus slugging. So yes, a very big loss, but it does open up some holes for some younger players, which will be a big topic of conversation coming up. But that's not to say that he is someone that can be replaced, because he is a big loss. Yeah, and Brandon Hyde noted that too when Coby Mayo got promoted. You weren't looking for Mayo to replace Jordan Westburg's production, because there's just no way. There's no 2.0. Right. Yeah. There's no way you can expect a rookie to give you the kind of production that Jordan Westburg has been giving you. I know that Coby Mayo is one of the best prospects in all of baseball, and hopefully the bat will translate in a positive way, but Jordan Westburg is that guy. Like, this is an all-star third baseman. Coby Mayo was not going to come up and be an all-star third baseman immediately. But you mentioned the leadership in the clubhouse, too. Jordan Westburg, he's not the most vocal guy in the world. He's more of a lead-by-example kind of player. But we heard from him yesterday, and it's clear just how good his mindset and his mentality is with this injury. He basically said, I was obviously disappointed when this happened, but trying to find the positives of it. It gives you more time to talk to guys like Coby Mayo and Jackson Holliday and just kind of be more present in the clubhouse and in the dugout. So
leave it to Jordan Westburg to still find the positives out of this and still be able to make an impact, even if it's not on the field. Obviously, you're going to miss his production on the field, but Jordan Westburg is taking this in stride. And, I mean, if he's taking the time to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go out of my way to help Coby Mayo, to help Jackson Holliday, that's a clear leader in this clubhouse.
Yeah, and to me, I think Jordan Westburg's the definition of an unsung hero. Like,
Sure.
He isn't loud, like you said. He's not one of those guys that everyone has all their attention to in the clubhouse. But I think that the numbers are there, the consistency is there, and he's probably one of the last people that you would want to see out for the hopefully not the whole season, but creeping into late September and postseason. So that's definitely a big hope that he can come back, and I think given his perseverance and everything in between, so I think that we may be able to see him back again.
Yeah, that's the hope, right? I mean, Jordan Westburg isn't going to be able to control how fast his hand is healing. Obviously, he can go through rehab assignments and he can work his way back, but at the end of the day, the bones are going to heal however fast they're going to heal. Best case scenario here is that he's back by the end of the regular season, probably is going to require some rehab outings in Bowie or Norfolk or wherever it may be, and hopefully he's back healthy, ready to go for the playoffs. Jordan Westburg and the team both said they are optimistic that he will be back by the end of the regular season. So, you know, obviously you don't want to rush him, but I think the goal here and the hope is that whatever rehab assignments he needs to go on and whatever work he needs to do, if he's healthy by the playoffs, that feels like a win, because I think you can get through the rest of this regular season without Jordan Westburg and you can continue to make a push. Obviously, it makes things like the division chase a lot more difficult without having one of your all-stars, but if you have him for the playoffs, that's what you need.
Yeah.
So that's fingers crossed for that.
Yeah, totally. I would say the only plus to the situation, not that there is to Jordan Westburg getting hurt and out for a lengthy amount of time, is the depth that the Orioles have in this infield, both minor leagues and big leagues, because with Jorge Mateo out and now Jordan Westburg out, that kind of shifts things around. And you and I had talked about a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, that there really isn't space for a Coby Mayo or Jackson Holliday to come up if there aren't injuries within those people, and that's kind of freed space up for them, which is both unfortunate for those big league contributors that we saw with Mateo and Westburg, but also lucky for the two young guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, the young guys would tell you that they don't want to see anybody get injured and they don't want their opportunities that way, but it speaks to the depth of the organization that Jorge Mateo goes down and you're able to call on Jackson Holliday, and Jordan Westburg goes down and you're able to call on Coby Mayo. Last thing I'll say on Westburg, the timing of it is so unfortunate just after the trade deadline, too. Not only just after the trade deadline, but with the promotion of Jackson Holliday, who was going to be close to your everyday second baseman, at this point he looks like your everyday second baseman. Jordan Westburg is better defensively at third than he is at second. And when you had kind of the hodgepodge of, okay, Westburg is going to play second sometimes if Arias is playing third, or when he's at second, when Westburg is at third, you have Mateo. It's like there were a lot of different lineup amalgamations where Westburg was playing second base and third base. With Jackson Holliday as your everyday second baseman, you could have Jordan Westburg at his best defensive position at third every single day, which would have been really nice to see his defense continue to take a step up as he doesn't have to bounce back and forth between positions. And just after the trade deadline, too, I know Coby Mayo was an obvious promotion, and maybe you wouldn't have made a deal because you have Coby Mayo. But I am curious if this injury happens 2 days before the trade deadline instead of 2 days after, do the Orioles look aggressively at a middle infielder, a third baseman type right-handed hitter to replace Jordan Westburg? I don't know. Obviously, Coby Mayo is a pretty darn good backup option to have if you weren't able to make a trade. But I am curious if the Orioles would have looked at something if this Jordan Westburg
Yeah.
injury had happened a few days before.
Well, first of all, amalgamation. What a dollar word there.
Thank you.
But second of all,
That's what they put me on the podcast for.
But second of all, yeah, I've heard it tossed around. Obviously, a right-handed hitting outfielder was a big topic of conversation and a big need. But you had more depth in the outfield already with Kjerstad going back and forth between the big leagues and the minor leagues and whatnot. But then if there was an injury in the outfield, you kind of would have been able to maneuver that a little bit better than given the depth out there than the infield. So I don't know. It is an interesting. You obviously you wouldn't be able to go back in time and see, but
right.
If it did happen before the trade deadline.
Yeah, who knows? But the infield has been hit with injuries. Jorge Mateo, we're not sure on his timetable. Jordan Westburg, we're hopeful on his timetable. But as of right now, the Orioles infield is really young. And this is the infield that we're going to see more often than not with Jackson Holliday at second base, Gunnar Henderson at shortstop, and Coby Mayo at third base, who was promoted from AAA Norfolk. 139 games there over the past 2 seasons, hit .287 with a .383 on-base percentage, slugged .555, an OPS close to .940, 32 home runs, 37 doubles. When you look back at some of the Orioles' top prospects and what they did at AAA Norfolk, Coby Mayo's offensive numbers are right in line with guys like Jordan Westburg, with Connor Norby, with, Gunnar Henderson, guys who just absolutely mashed at that level. Jackson Holliday as well. He certainly didn't have anything else to prove with the bat. The question marks all came pretty much defensively as Mayo was bouncing between third base and first base. When, Jordan Westburg went down, it became clear that Coby Mayo was going to be a third baseman moving forward. So you saw a lot of him defensively at third base. Mike Elias has said over the past few weeks that they were happy with the progress they had seen from him defensively. If there was a spot to bring him up that made sense, as you mentioned, these conversations of where do these prospects fit in? Where do they get playing time? Unfortunately, they usually get to be figured out because of injuries. And with Jordan Westburg's injury, Coby Mayo was just the logical one to come up and fill his place.
Yeah, and there's no surprise that injuries have been a theme in Baltimore this season, and it's kind of been obviously the next man up approach and where and how many shoes can be filled with the depth that's already there both in the big leagues and the minor leagues. But it's also not new news that Orioles' top prospects usually struggle in their first major league stint. So with Coby Mayo 0 for 9 right now in the big leagues, yet to get a hit, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts, but only 10 at-bats with 10 in 4 games. So I think definitely give him some patience. It's the same type of pressure that Jackson Holliday came up, and we're looking at him now in his second time around with all that less heightened pressure and performing incredibly well in the second stint. So with Coby Mayo, it's gonna take some time, some more at-bats, more opportunities, and I think he'll get there for sure.
Yeah, Coby Mayo will get there eventually, but as you mentioned, this is just a thing that happens when you get called up to the big leagues. It is incredibly hard to make the jump from AAA to the big leagues, as we have heard from coaches for years. I mean, the gap just gets bigger between a jump from high A to double A, the jump from double A to triple A gets bigger, and then the jump from triple A to the big leagues is massive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you're jumping 2 leagues in the minors. So don't expect Coby Mayo to just hit the ground running right away. We've seen it with Adley Rutschman. We have seen it with Jackson Holliday, and we're going to talk about him here in a few minutes. If you're panicking after the first 10, 12 games of somebody's big league career, then you're just not paying attention to what happens in the first 10, 12 games of somebody's big league career. Like, this is just what happens even to some of the best prospects in baseball, which is why Brandon Hyde made a point of saying, I know that Coby Mayo is filling in a Jordan Westburg type of role. Hyde said that Mayo is going to start at third base quite a bit. Don't know if it's going to be every day, but probably close to every day. He's not going to be Jordan Westburg. So don't expect Jordan Westburg numbers when Coby Mayo gets up here. The bat is incredibly advanced. The bat was incredibly advanced for Adley Rutschman, too. In the first 15 games of his career, he hit 143.
Yeah.
Because that's just what happens. Adley Rutschman was older when he got promoted than Coby Mayo is right now. Mayo has still progressed really, really quickly through this system. He is at the big league level before most people anticipated he would be. This was a high school draft pick in 2020. So just try to temper the expectations a little bit for how he can hit the ground running. But it's hard to do because we're now in August and you are expecting guys in the lineup to contribute to winning baseball games. And I'm not saying that if Coby Mayo is struggling, he's not contributing to winning games in other ways. Hopefully the defense shows up at third base, and I'm sure the bat is going to come along. But it's a hard position for Mayo to be in. Mm-hmm. It's a difficult position for Jackson Holliday to be in as well, where, yes, these are two of the top prospects in baseball, but you're also in a division chase in August, where all of a sudden the magnifying glass is getting closer on these games. And whereas in years past, you had Adley Rutschman, even Gunnar Henderson to an extent, where, you wanted them to come up and succeed, but you didn't necessarily need them to go out and win you baseball games. Coby Mayo and Jackson Holliday are expected to do that right now. That's a hard position to be in.
Yeah, and you're also pretty much splitting your time with Ramon Arias. So incredible defense in the infield, someone that you would like to have there. And he was playing really well in the month of July. In his last 6 games before July ended was hitting .375, 6 hits, a home run, and 4 RBIs. So you have that to kind of, luckily, to fill those shoes for Jordan Westburg. Obviously not going to do as a replacement as well. But you have someone who, for the Orioles, you have that depth and have someone who can be there to help out. But for Coby Mayo, you're also trying to align with his defensive performance and kind of fill those shoes, and as well as offensively now for Arias, who is playing really well too.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Ramon Arias. I feel like for the last few weeks here, I have just pointed out that Ramon Arias has been really good lately because fans like to look at lineup posts with Ramon Arias in it, and for whatever reason, they decide that that's automatically a bad lineup. I would once again like to remind you that in the month of July, Ramon Arias had a .341 batting average, a .463 on-base percentage, and a .940 OPS. So I don't know what else you want out of a 9-hitter in your lineup than a .340 batting average with a .940 OPS. But if your initial reaction is to look at a lineup with Ramon Arias in it and automatically say that that lineup is bad, I don't know what to tell you.
People said that about Kowser, and now look at him. He's the leading vote for AL Rookie of the Year. So people just like to jump to conclusions.
Yeah, so let's not do that. Speaking of jumping to conclusions, let's move on to the next topic, which is that Jackson Holliday is good. I have 3 notes here, Annie, that I would like to read off. My first note is, why did you think that he wasn't good? Second note is, who told you that he wasn't good? And the third note is, what possibly convinced you that he wasn't good? Because I can't begin to read back the comments that we have had over the past few weeks at the trade deadline when Jackson Holliday was initially struggling at the big leagues that said that Jackson Holliday was overrated, that he wasn't going to be good at the big league level, that you should trade him for every potential pitching option known to man at the trade deadline. Jackson Holliday is good. I don't know why I have to defend Jackson Holliday on this podcast, but Jackson Holliday is really good, and he is showing you what potential he always had over the past 6 games. He had 3 straight multi-hit games in Cleveland, 3 home runs in his first 6 games back. I don't know what convinced you that Jackson Holliday wasn't good. I guess it was, the 30 at-bats to begin his big league career? That's outlandish to make that evaluation then, and he is showing you why that was a ridiculous conclusion to jump to.
One of my first thoughts when he hit that grand slam, aside from, oh my gosh, look at all those people diving on the floor for the ball, were that I sure hope that all the people that wanted to trade him for a top pitching prospect, which would have given up a lot more than just Jackson Holliday.
Yeah.
I hope that they're glad that that didn't happen now, because they are all happy to see Jackson Holliday performing well. But it's almost like fans are very quick to judge when he's not performing well.
No.
I mean, first 34 at-bats in the majors were not an indication of how good he is. Look at him now. And he even said that with the pressure not heightened like it was the first time in April, he feels a lot more comfortable, more easygoing with it, and I feel like that's something that we'll see with Coby Mayo as well in the future. And I mean, just to get your first big league home run, hitting Utah Street and a grand slam is just incredible. So
that was so
kudos
cool
to him. You missed it in person, so
we don't need to talk about it.
So kudos to him. I'm glad that he's finally performing well. Happy for the guy.
Yeah, it is. I know that baseball is a 162 game season, and most fans don't react to it as if it is that long of a season. But it's a good point to bring up Coby Mayo as well, where I think Coby Mayo is going to settle in. The bat is going to be great. I know that Coby Mayo has not recorded his first big league hit yet. He is going to be fine. And if you need any more evidence that he is going to be fine, just look at Jackson Holliday, who now has, I think, a dozen balls put in play since returning that have been hit over 95 miles an hour. Even his singles are like 105 off the bat.
He has a 60% hard hit rate.
He's really good. He is already performing admirably. And I think if you're going to talk about, how do you replace the production of Jordan Westburg, it's not going to be one guy, right? Mm-hmm. Like it reminds me of the Moneyball clip of how do you replace Giambi. It's going to be a bunch of different guys doing good things. Hopefully Coby Mayo steps up. Ramon Arias has been excellent recently. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he is going to step up as well. You brought in right-handed bats in Austin Slater and Eloy Jimenez that have looked good thus far. And Jackson Holliday is playing at a really, really good level right now. I'm not anticipating that he's going to keep this home run pace up or the hard hit rate up, but I think he can be a really valuable player down the stretch, and I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see him get moved up the lineup a little bit. Yeah. This Jackson Holliday has the potential. We know years down the line, this is a number 1, number 2 hitter in your lineup type of guy. It wouldn't shock me if he starts to get there towards the end of this season. That's how well he is playing right now. So, again, I'm still not anticipating all-star level play for the second half of the year out of Jackson Holliday, but he's the number 1 prospect in baseball for a reason.
Yeah.
He was always going to heat up. This was always going to happen, and he's going to be a huge, huge contributor down the stretch.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, in this case, it's not next man up, but next men up. I think you are going to need that all-around contribution to fill the shoes of Jordan Westburg and Jorge Mateo, for that matter. So I think that this is the guy that you want to be leading that pack. I mean, with Arias as well, of course, but leading that kind of Coby Mayo, Jackson Holliday duo to fill those shoes. I mean, also, I just want to note an over 1,300 OPS in his first however many games back in the major leagues. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, he's really good.
Really great player.
He's really good. This is what the number 1 overall prospect in baseball does. A 1,378 OPS, slugging 900 with a 400 batting average in the 6 games since returning. Pretty good. And if you thought that Jackson Holliday was overrated because of 30-plus at-bats,
look at him now.
I have bad news for you. But Jackson Holliday is just among the new faces that we have seen. It's kind of crazy post-trade deadline just how different this lineup looks. Day in and day out, it is a ton of new faces because of injuries, because of trades, but we've seen some really fun contributions thus far. The bigger trades that the Orioles made at the deadline, at least in terms of what they gave up to acquire guys, were Zach Eflin and Trevor Rogers in the starting rotation, Sir Anthony Dominguez in the bullpen. Eloy Jimenez and Austin Slater have been, I know it's a very small sample size thus far, but they have been really fun surprises so far. Eloy Jimenez, 5 hits in his first 3 games, getting starts at designated hitter as a right-handed hitter against right-handed pitching, even just because the bat has been hot. I don't want to undervalue what the change in environment might do for Eloy Jimenez. Because I know the question marks around Eloy have been health, trying to keep him on the field, but he has a track record of being a really, really good hitter. And I know it's been a few years since we have seen him put up fantastic numbers, but he has that in the tank somewhere if he can stay on the field. It's not like he's, 34 years old and we're talking about success when he was in his 20s. Like, Eloy is still a younger player who has had success early in his career, and he goes from a team that is on pace to be one of the worst teams in baseball record-wise to a team that is fighting for the best division in baseball in the American League East. And by all accounts, has a really good vibe in the clubhouse, and Eloy has seemed to fit right in thus far. I don't want to undervalue what a change like that can do for a player when you're not playing for the White Sox anymore.
Yeah. No, I think that this was the perfect thing for Eloy Jimenez, was a change of pace and a change of scenery, because I think that we are going to start to see him kind of get back to that best player version of himself. Brett Hollander asked him yesterday if the guy that was once one of the best prospects in baseball is still in there, and he said yes. He just needs to, he's been battling injuries for a long time, just needs to get over that. But he's still in there, and he feels that Baltimore is bringing it back out of him, which is really, would be great to see. I mean, just having him as a designated hitter has helped already. I mean, he's had 2 multi-hitters out of 4 games that he's been with the Orioles, an RBI in each of those in Cleveland. So I think that he has already been contributing and already starting to see glimpses of that 2022 season that he had, where he played really well. I think it's all about getting back to that level of having an 858 OPS that season. Much lower this year, but getting back to that. And not to mention, he's just an all-around great human being. He just, seeing him with interviews just makes me smile. He says, "Hi, Mom," at the end of every interview.
Wholesome Eloy Jimenez, which is maybe not insignificant for Annie, as we are doing social shifts and clipping up interviews. Might not be terribly significant on the field, but it is important in our hearts. Yeah, Eloy Jimenez has been a lot of fun. Austin Slater has looked great thus far. 3 for 5 with a walk. Again, talking about, the lineups with Ramon Arias, there was an uproar when Austin Slater was leading off against a left-handed pitcher, and then just put together really quality at-bats, went 2 for 3 with a double, ho-hum. This is a good veteran. I mean, a lot of great years in San Francisco where he was just a really solid player. It wasn't, all-star caliber years, but just a solid rotational outfielder. He's got an 800 career OPS against left-handed pitching, hitting .275. I know Brandon Hyde got some flack yesterday for pinch hitting Austin Slater, which, by the way, turned out to be a productive at-bat with a walk and an RBI. So, whatever. Don't need to get on that Brandon Hyde soapbox at the moment. But Austin Slater, another under-the-radar move where we weren't really sure what his role with the big league club is going to be. I wasn't even sure when the trade happened if we were going to see Austin Slater in the big leagues very much. He hasn't gotten a ton of opportunities. As I mentioned, just 5 at-bats, 4 plate appearances. But Austin Slater has looked really solid thus far. And if this is the role that we see Slater in, where he gets some occasional starts against left-handed pitching and he's a pinch hitter every once in a while, again, it's a good veteran presence in the clubhouse. He has been on that San Francisco team that had a lot of winning for years. So I think Austin Slater, this is a role that makes sense for him. He has been historically a pretty good hitter against left-handed pitching. Brandon Hyde is clearly thinking that he is just going to put him in the best positions to succeed day in and day out as a platoon type of hitter, and that works. That works in this Orioles outfield right now as they are currently constructed. Yeah, and in the outfield, too, for someone who might have a little bit more consistency and experience than a Heston Kjerstad and a little bit more trust defensively in that setting. But also, you're right, against lefty pitchers, that is someone that you would want in that situation. With the whole pinch hitting last night and the moves that Brandon Hyde made, I mean, definitely you would want him in there instead of a Colton Cowser. I think that it was different per position and who he was pinch hitting for. But Colton Cowser has incredible strikeout rate against lefty pitchers. So I think that in that situation, it makes sense. So we'll see how and who he keeps pinch hitting for down the stretch. But pinch hitting in the 8th inning worked for Brandon Hyde not too long ago in Cleveland. So I think, again, jumping to conclusions. But aside from that, Austin Slater is someone who has surprised me well, has surprised me well since the trade deadline, not knowing where he was going to stand in this lineup and where he was going to play. So I think that so far he's kind of sold me a little bit more so than when they picked him up. Yeah, and that role just makes sense for Austin Slater. I know that, it wasn't a big trade. You got cash considerations going out the other end for Austin Slater. So it's not like you made a huge splash for a right-handed hitting outfielder. But Slater isn't going to play every day. He's going to be a platoon bat. He's probably not even going to get every start in the outfield against left-handed pitching. It's certainly possible with Cedric Mullins struggling this season against left-handed pitching. Colton Cowser, I think, is pretty much a close to everyday player at this point, regardless of whether or not it's a right-handed pitcher, left-handed pitcher. I know Anthony Santander is going to be in the lineup every day. So maybe Slater just starts in left field against left-handed pitching. But again, that's a good role for him. It's a career 800 OPS hitter against left-handed pitching. So it makes sense. He's a good veteran guy, and he's been impressive thus far. In terms of the other new guys, I mean, Gregory Soto has struggled a little bit out of the bullpen. By a little bit, I mean he has struggled out of the bullpen. Sir Anthony Dominguez, I think, has been as advertised. Zach Eflin has been excellent. Trevor Rogers, I know, didn't have his best outing of the season in his first start in Baltimore, but I'm encouraged with what he had to say over the past few days, just in terms of going, hey, this is more information and tools and numbers that I have gotten in Baltimore than I really ever got in my career in Miami in terms of pitch mechanics and pitch sequencing and things like that. This is exactly what you were hoping for from Trevor Rogers. Obviously, you want the numbers to show up as well, but when you're acquiring an arm like Trevor Rogers, who has had success in the past, you have to believe that you can unlock, maybe not an all-star form, but somewhere close to that.
Potential.
That's why you're moving a top prospect like Connor Norby, a solid rotational outfielder type of player in Kyle Stowers. That's why you're moving those guys to get Trevor Rogers in the building for 2.5 years. And it's encouraging to hear him say and be excited about the fact that he is getting a bunch of this new information, that they are talking to him about mechanical tweaks and pitch sequencing tweaks and what he can do here and there. We haven't seen it show up on the field yet because obviously it's been one start, but that's the kind of encouraging stuff that you want to hear from a pitcher that you just acquired, has upside somewhere in the tank, as he had an all-star form a couple of years ago, and you have under team control for the next 2.5 years.
And you're also making your first start with a new organization against the top team in baseball, the Guardians. So that it was a less than ideal start with less than ideal numbers. But tonight he makes another start with Grayson Rodriguez and everything happening there. He'll make the start tonight against the Blue Jays, which I think will be good for him. Good for him to get some more pitches under his belt against a team that is struggling in the AL East, but also still has potential. We saw it last night where they gave it to Baltimore last night. So we'll see if he can kind of hone in that impressive start that Suarez had last night against a struggling team, maintain them, and then hopefully get another win out.
Yeah, and again, I think Zach Eflin is an exception because Zach Eflin is a veteran guy that you've seen a lot of. I mean, James McCann especially saw a lot of Eflin in Philly when James McCann was in New York.
True.
Like, those are veteran pitchers that you see all the time and you understand how they like to pitch, what they like to do, things like that. It's hard for a new pitcher to just jump right in with a new organization and feel comfortable when you're talking about new pitching coaches, but also new catchers that are calling games for you. So with guys like Sir Anthony Dominguez, Gregory Soto, Trevor Rogers, it's hard for a pitcher to just jump right into things. I mean, as a catcher, you're going, okay, what do you throw and what does it do and where does it go and where do you like to put? Like, you're learning all of that new information. You're learning what the pitcher likes to do, where they like to put, how they like to sequence, things like that. So, yes, I know Gregory Soto has struggled in his first few outings in Baltimore. He's getting acclimated to new catchers, to a new environment, to all of those things. Same goes for Sir Anthony Dominguez. Same goes for Trevor Rogers. Give the pitchers a little bit of time to get acclimated. I know that patience is hard to come by, especially in a pennant race in August, but let's use context. Let's pump the brakes a little bit.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it'll be exciting to see how much they mold into, whether it's the all-star versions of themselves they were a few years ago, or completely, like you said, unlocking new potential with different pitching mechanics and coaching in Baltimore. So I'm very excited to see how it goes.
Yeah, well, a lot of new faces in the Orioles lineup throughout the Orioles pitching staff. We are hoping to get some good news on injury front too, so that there are not a ton of new faces, but hopefully, Annie, we will be able to come back next week and there is not a massive piece of news for us to talk about. And if there is, hopefully it's that the Orioles are on a 7-game winning streak.
Or even that we leave today and there's a big piece of news, because that tends to happen.
It does tend to happen
after we finish recording.
Yeah. So hopefully none of that.
Yes.
And hopefully no more injury news to talk about next week. And if there is, hopefully it's positive. But that'll just about do it for this week's edition of The Bird's Nest. Thank you so much for following along with us live on YouTube and Facebook. We are live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Or you can catch us after the fact on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts or your digital shows. You can find us here on The Bird's Nest. Big thank you to Amy Jennings behind the scenes for producing this one. For Annie Klaff, I am Brennan Mortensen, and we'll catch you next time.